Hola, I'm Pablo from Barcelona, and I want to talk to you in 20 minutes, I hope so, about the museum yet to come, exercise on institutional imagination. Museums, understood as agonist spaces, are the places for all the never written stories, in two directions, rewriting the past against the grain, but also activating new forms of political imagination, able to defy the rationality imposed by extractivism, neo-colonialism, and semiocapitalism, or the so-called semiocapitalism by before Berardi. To do so, and in order to exercise institutional imagination, I would like to call for this talk today to the figure of the museum yet to come, that is in the title of this presentation, following the figure of the yet to come that Cuban theorist José Esteban Muñoz used in his book, for me, a very interesting book, Cruising Utopia, the then and there of queer futurity. When describing the queer as something that has yet to come, that is not live, as a negation of the here and the now, and as an appeal towards the potentiality of the concrete possibility of a different world. I want in this presentation, I would like to continue with some of the ideas that I presented in Madrid in a previous event in November in Madrid, when we could talk about the Constituent Museum. There I started to develop this idea of the museum yet to come, to link museology with this idea of not being not being in a here and now, no? And I also want to link this idea of constituencies to one of the core things of L'Internazionale for the next 4 years, which is called Our Many Europes. And I will try to respond to this Our Many Europes, use it or link it to this question, who writes the future? And to try to think what means this hour for these many Europes? Who are behind this hour? I also want to share with you that I am very concerned with life. I'm very concerned with the civilizatory crisis that we are facing, with the ecological collapse and the end of the full energies. Our time as a species is becoming to an end. I took this image from yesterday. We can find these sort of images every day. Voices supported by contrasted scientific reports date the melting of the polar ice caps, the acidification of the oceans, the extinction of the species. As if Alexander, you talk about this humanity in hurrying to its own destruction, no? It's part of your fiction. As if we were in a fiction, humanity has become a spectator of its own disaster with a very limited agency to prevent collapse. Most of our ways of life, as well as many of the cultural manifestations that we manage, defend, and activate, contribute to the destruction of the planet and are framed within a production of subjectivity that only understands welfare and progress in a certain way, that which defined by capitalism modernity. In her recent installation, This is the Future, the German artist Hito Steyl confronts the false as well as the extended promise to escape collapse through technology. In a dark room, the viewer meets an immersive installation consisting of a forest of standing screens showing time-lapse blooming flowers and growing cacti, like the ones at the picture and like one of my shirt. As a specially developed algorithm modifies the data entered, and the result is a landscape of beautiful flowers that constantly mutate in a spatial liquidity. They are poor images in continuous transit through the channels of information that come from the future. The mechanical voiceover gives information found by the algorithm and warns that our life relies on what we cannot see, from pollution clogged photosynthesis to overactive algorithms and artificial intelligence. This paradoxical sentence stands out from the rest of the video, and it is pronounced by the mechanical voiceover at the time that in the screen make appearance images of neo-Nazi groups in a city that could be any of our current Europe fortress. These images, however, are more solid than those that show us the future floral, are images with more body, more materiality, are documentary images. They come from reality. And without any doubt, one of the characteristics of our time, neoliberal time, time of cognitive capitalism, time of cultural industries, is our precarious existence. Our present is unpredictable, and we are fighting for, instead of working for we are fighting for it instead of working for a better future. We are strictly attached to the present, to the here and now, because we live precarious lives. Because our imagination is trapped in the present. We know all about the future. We inhabit the posthumous condition described by Marina Garcés. We live in a time of exhaustion. Following José Esteban Muñoz, I would quote, straight time tells us there is no future but the here and now of our everyday life. The only futurity promised is that the reproductive majoritarian heterosexuality, the spectacle of the state refurbishing its ranks through overt and subsidized acts of reproduction. From that point of view, we should reactivate our imagination for other different futures and work intensively in the present to make them possible. Museums, because of their symbolic importance and their direct impact on local economies, let's talk about their responsibility in recognition and redistribution, following Nancy Fraser, have a fundamental role in shaping the world that is yet to come. The neoliberal project seems to have taken over the diagnosis made by Rosalind Krauss back in 1990, when in the cultural logic of Museum of Late Capitalism propheticized the populist temple of leisure and entertainment. However, we can think, as Claire Bishop does in Radical Museology, and my colleagues of La Internationale also do, that there is a museum model committed to other histories, temporalities and practices different from the hegemonic and resistant to the neoliberal cooptation of culture. But the future was when? In her series, Flowers for Africa, the artist Kipwani Kiwanga remakes the floral ensemble that were arranged in the different independence ceremonies of the African countries. Through archival material, the artist asked different florists to redo the bouquet that afterwards will be exhibited for weeks in the gallery space and that will wither, rot, and dry. In a way, Kiwangwa questions colonial time, teleology, and the logic that any future will be better, and the trust on the possibility based on the Western notion of development or progress. The passage of time tarnishes the promises of independence and freedom that were promulgated in the newly created African Republic that, although they were mostly born as socialist projects, soon fell trapped by destructive logics of colonial capitalism. Western linear time, in this case, inevitably leads to wilting. Perhaps, therefore, it is necessary to start to mislead linear time and start to walk in a new direction that defies that linearity, going backwards instead of going forward, following the invitation by Pauline Baudry and Renate Lawrence in Moving Backwards, her contribution to Swiss Pavilion in the last Venice Biennial. I'm going to read a letter that they give to the spectator, to the visitor when enter in her installation, and I will just, well, it starts with Venice, February 2019. Dear visitor, well, I wanna go for an extract only. We have, of course, no recipe, But after taking a deep breath, we are up to for turning disadvantage into a tool. Let's go collectively move backwards. Women of the Kurdish guerrilla wore their shoes the wrong way round to walk from one place in the snowy mountains to the other. This tactic saved their lives. It seems as you are walking backwards, but actually you are walking forwards, or the other way round. Let's take this story as a starting point for the project. Can we use the tactical ambivalence of this movement as a means of coming together, reorganizing our desires and finding ways of exercising freedoms? Thus, in imitation of Kurdish women, in the central video of the installation appears a concatenation of queer characters who walk and dance in a black box shot mostly with double shoes. This one, you can see the detail there, no? With double shoes, whose footprints on the floor would leave a trace without clear direction. They are characters that advance, but whose record is not invisible, but only equivocal, and their journey is not clearly related to go forward, to progress, to advance, or to go back. With their movement, with their persistent dance, they are once again building an accomplished community and resisting not only the destructive power of the heteropatriarchy, but also its obsessive directionality and temporality. Lately, as I already told you, I'm exploring the concept of the museum yet to come as an exercise of institutional imagination and conceptual production. The museum as an institution in which the art and practice associated with it can regain their historical function of illuminating other worlds within this. I am, maybe unsuccessfully, looking for the same question asked by Pat Rojo, the Spanish choreographer Pat Rojo, when in her last piece he asked herself, how to commit to what is not yet? What is the responsibility of art with respect to the creation of the future? I don't think so much about recovering the desire of the historical avant-garde that thought that art is the outpost of future society in teleological terms. But we can start thinking about how to activate museums in the direction of configuring new scenarios of what is possible. In this sense, the museum to come will review, on the one hand, the stories of domination, not only from the narratives, but also from the forms of production of meaning and work, and will also put life at the center by fostering a culture of care. Muñoz offers a queer futurity, or a queer sociability, as a new form of temporality that challenges the heteropatriarchal here and now, and move it towards the there and then of minorities through the activation of aesthetic strategies to survive and imagine ways of being within utopian worlds. The then disrupts the tyranny of the now, because it's both past and future. I'm going to end because I would like to call. No, I would like to do some things. No, first of all, go to The Queer Art of Failure by Jack Haberstam, where she or he tackles from the defense of the production of law theory the way in which capitalism and heteropatriarchy have designed some forms of normative happiness and success that deserve to be dismantled. I would like to look at his proposal from ecofeminist perspective and bet with him for a life in which face it with the demand for a consciousness of vital fullness based on accumulation, success, and reproduction. It could be convenient to oppose other possible option of austere good life and less harmful to the context. Playing with the idea of queer art of failure and taking it beyond Haberstam's proposal, in reading its text, I wonder what it could be like and how a museum of failure. What could be a museum of failure? A museum that resists the logic of success, a museum that resists the logic of productivity, a museum that challenged value and ownership, and that, on the contrary, was a museum that did not want to have more visitors, more income, more square meters of exhibition, more international artists and speakers, more collective exhibition, more archival materials, and more employees at low cost. Because all institutional inspirations are immersed in a logic of accumulation whose impact on life is devastating. The cultural world we inhabit, what we have called culture, has also become a threat to life. Therefore, what in the view of many politicians, citizens, artists, and cultural producers could be considered a museum of failure may be the only possible alternative to the museum we know. And to finish, I would like to share with you this quote from José Esteban Muñoz's book, one of the first pages. No? And I would like to link this with the questions that we have at the beginning. No, what means our many Europes? No, what is the meaning of this we in this text? No, well, what's the we is the we that wants a new society in terms of José Esteban Muñoz. That's not this we does not speak to a merely identitarian position or one identitarian logic, but instead a logic of futurity. The we or that we is not yet conscious. It's a we to come. It's a future society that is being invoked and addressed at the same moment. No. This is why I think I wanted to finish with this, no? With this idea, because José Esteban Muñoz's main inspiration was the work of Ernst Bloch. And Ernst Bloch was a thinker that worked a lot with hope. And I think that we put some of hope in our present and start thinking how can we be more ambitious in our possible futures, in all the good things that are yet to come. And that's all.